Recording. Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us for a Rebuilt by Grace podcast and video episode. I have the lovely Miss Paula. And you know how August is the 8th month and everybody says new beginnings is number 8? Well, those new beginnings generally start with a pivot, one that you may have not seen coming, one that you're like, excuse me, Lord, what now? But if you I heard TD Jakes one time say he was on a motorcycle. He had a vision of being on a motorcycle. And when you turned, if you leaned into the turn, you wouldn't crash out. So we're going to talk about how to lean into the turn all this month. So Miss Paula, hello. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for asking. It was like perfect timing and get to just have a conversation with a longtime friend.
Yay! So have you experienced a pivot?
Well, since you and I have known each other a long time, I've experienced a lot of pivots, but today I want to share a pivot with my business
Yes.
because I think that kind of lends itself to the times we're in and people still trying to figure out their place and how they fit. And I know I certainly went through that. Years ago, first of all, I lived through it. I told my dad when I was a teenager that I was never going to work for anybody, especially not corporate America. And I was always going to work for myself. And I think every teen thinks that. And I did work in corporate America and was blessed with working in publishing, which I loved. But it wasn't my passion. It wasn't my mission from God. And that's what I was looking for. And I did open a clothing store, brick and mortar, when I lived in Dallas. I had the funds to do it. And I realized that just because I build it, they will not come. So,
oh gosh, I cannot tell you how many times I have done that. And I'm like, where are they? Where are they?
yes. And I think I was blessed with that vision from God because I needed to get it out of my system. I could have gotten to this age and said, what if? I loved every minute of it. I did a great job. And a great job in retail is you break even. So remember,
Oh.
I started with a chunk of money and I ended up not owing money. To this day, I do not know where this person came from who came in and wanted to buy my business.
Oh, wow.
And I just looked up and said, thank you, God. And I said it sincerely. And I don't know where this person came from. It was before the internet, it was in the 80s. And I walked away, owing nothing and saying, okay, so now what? And I said, well, I've got to look for an opportunity that's in my passion, which is health and wellness and fitness and being there for people. But I have to make money. And God, you know, I don't have the money for a traditional business. So now what? And I started working in corporate America in publishing, and I looked at direct sales because it was low cost of entry typically. It was products typically that I cared about, and my clients were always asking me my advice on health and wellness. So I would test the products on myself. I now know many years later that's probably not the best test case, even if you're healthy. But I would say it's 2 weeks. I'll try it out and see what I think. And if I have a positive experience, then I'll feel good recommending it. And of course, the internet blessed me with a lot more options, but that was a long time ago. And I ended up after 9 of them saying, okay, God, please, I think that's not my path. I've had 9. There's several times along the way where I actually supported myself that way, but it wasn't lasting. So I had a talk with myself. I think God was kind of chuckling, but I was talking to myself right then and saying,
Sometimes you need to give yourself a good talking to.
yes. And I said, okay, I hear you. And I really think I was talking to myself. I hear you. I'm not cut out for this industry. Let me just accept I'm corporate America and do my best to be a good person. And that's it. And but I did also say, okay, God, this is a serious prayer here because I talked to God. He's my father, and he's
Yes.
here for me, and I speak to him that way. And I said, God, I know there's more out there for me. I know I am meant to be an entrepreneur, a successful entrepreneur following my passion. I know it. And you and I both know I do not have a big pile of money to start something. And you also know that I feel like I'm meant to have a good partnership. I've lived
Yeah.
alone for a long time. I've been successful alone. I'm happy. If that's my path, I accept it. But with business and with a partnership, if the right opportunities are placed in front of me, help me to recognize them. Because I think every one of us sees an opportunity and maybe we don't recognize it.
That is so good because that is so true. You'll be right in the midst of the situation that you had prayed for, but because it doesn't look like what you prayed for, you're kind of like, God, where's the answer? Where's the answer?
Yeah. Oh, I sent you a rowboat, but I
Yeah.
don't want a rowboat.
You
Yes.
have it out there.
And then I think a lot of people do this. So I thought, well, I'm just going to test this because God always says, ask and believe and you will receive. So I said, okay, you put the right person in front of me. He has to not have children. And when I've told some people that, I love children, I'm like a Pied Piper. And people said, well, don't you like children? I said, I love children. I love children, and they can tell that. And I have lots of kids in my family, but I said all I've ever experienced is somebody comes from a split marriage where there's children, there's other things you're dealing with.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, my ideal situation, because you tell me to ask, my ideal situation is no children. And then my second ideal situation, I've been alone so long that I spend every single Christmas season with my family up north. I am not changing that. So this person has to be okay with being with my side of the family. And he has to be built like a baseball player. That's what I said.
Why not?
I'm from Cincinnati. You're raised to love baseball. And I knew exactly what that meant to me. And turns out I had a friend called me, an international banker. This is after this prayer. I prayed, I believed, and I just released it. And probably a week later, a friend calls me, international banker. So doesn't that sound like somebody you're going to listen to, right?
Yeah.
International banker. And she said, Paula, there's a company you need to check out, brand new company. And I said, don't tell me. And she said, why? And I said, because if it's direct sales, I'm tired. I've tried 9 times. I'm not, I'm not interested. And then this little voice, which this shoulder's right where God sits. This little voice says, Paula, you wanted to have your eyes open to opportunities. And as quick as I said no, I said, okay, what date do you want me to be there? And she told me, how much money to send her, for a ticket, a standard all day seminar. And I said, okay, I'll be there. I sent her the money because Venmo wasn't invented yet. So I sent
Yeah.
her a check, a paper check. And I just kept saying, she's an international banker. I'm going to be open. I'm going to get here on time. I'm going to be dressed for business. And I'm not leaving till it's over because I paid to be here. So
That's good. Yeah.
I get there and I never saw her again. Yeah.
No.
I didn't hear from her for 2 years.
She wasn't at the conference?
Mm.
What
She
was
was
her reason?
she was going through some really, really hard, kind of scary personal things
Oh,
that she couldn't share even with friends, but I found that out 2 years later. So
wow.
I'm sharing that because it's another pivot for a reason to walk out of that meeting. Right.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, I'm really sorry she's not here. I know how to talk to strangers. I'm going to be sitting here learning anyway. So I'm going to just grab a seat and open up my notepad and pay attention. And there was this wonderful couple who did an 8-hour seminar. Now we're used to PowerPoint, right? 8-hour seminar on a whiteboard. And I was captivated. And their message was debt and desperation to peace and prosperity.
Wow.
And I said, oh, I like peace and prosperity. And
Yes.
you could feel that's who they were. And I loved every minute. At lunchtime, I'm like, well, who am I going to eat with? It's fine, but it's a crowded restaurant. Everybody's there. So I walked up to a couple people and just said, can I sit with you? And I guess no one had ever done that with them before. But I sat with them. They were nice enough, but they were, they didn't know who I was. And that's when I saw my husband.
Oh.
I saw this guy and he was just walking around, but I saw him and I said, huh, he's kind of cute. And maybe I'll see where he's sitting in the afternoon, and I'm not here with anybody. I'll sit near him. We'll just comment to each other as this is going on. And it turns out it was him, except after lunch, I never saw him again. We're in this room at the same seminar, and I never saw him again.
Oh, wow.
I did not see him again for 3 months.
Wow.
And I didn't know who he was. I just knew he was at that seminar. Turns out 3 months later, when we talked about it, he had to leave early that day for a prior commitment. But I was there. I was there by myself. Everything was on paper. I do not know to this day. They must have said something about the corporate office. That's all I can figure. I just went home. I said, I know this is what I'm supposed to do. I called the corporate office because you know me. I called the corporate office and said, hey, I have this application and I don't know how to fill it out. I remember who I talked to. And he said, okay. I said, what is a distributor ID? And he goes, well, Paula, do you know your social security number? I said, I do. Well, put that there. I said, okay. I said, what does placement mean? Or what does sponsorship mean? I said, is that the person who invited me? He said, yes. I said, okay, but it asked for her ID. Oh, well, here's her social. They gave me her social.
Oh, my Lord.
It was a different world, right?
Yes.
So they gave me her social. And then I said, what's placement mean? Aren't I just working with her? No. Did she mention anybody who's on her team? I said, well, I met this one lady. She's very nice. Okay, here's her social. They said, put that down and here's her social. So I did. And remember, I was looking to make money in a business that had trust, performance, and integrity. Those were my key things. And I said, I need to get in for a little cost. So I'm looking at what is the absolute most I can get for my money, just meaning products that I care about. I knew nothing about the company really, other than debt and desperation to peace and prosperity. And I knew where they were located, but I said products I care about and products that I get high percentage of credit for these products, but not much, So a photo book. Now, whoever has a photo book, but I was an avid photographer, not like Ross. I wasn't professional, but I was a photographer where I annoyed people because I went through so many rolls of film.
That's awesome.
Yes, I loved it. I loved it. And so people after the fact, they would call me, what did you order? I said, the photo book. Nobody ever buys that. I said, do you realize you can put somebody on the cover of a magazine? Do you realize you can, remember when that was popular? You could do this, you could do t-shirts. I said, do you know how many little kids in my family would love this?
Oh.
And so that's what I bought in a couple health and wellness products. But I got started and it just was easy to me. I mean, because it felt good. I said, I'm going to follow this person I thank God that I always paid attention and that I always followed what I said I was going to do. But in looking back, I don't know that I did.
Mm,
I promise you, I feel like this is my opportunity and I'm going to follow everything the founder of this company says. I'm following it.
wow.
And I said, even though I'm going to say behind the scenes, are you kidding me? I'm not doing that. I will get over it and then I will follow it. And I lived alone. I saw my husband across a crowded room, but he didn't see me. So I had a house with a nice pantry. I opened the pantry up and I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, Paula, this is loaded with products from 9 previous companies. You should probably use these first while you sell the other products. And then I heard this word integrity. How can I talk
Mm.
to Shannon about products that I'm not using? And then I said, okay, I'll give them away. And that voice spoke again. How can you give away products you're not willing to sell? Okay, God,
Oh.
I'm hearing you loud and clear. And I threw them away. And I don't waste things, but it was all about integrity.
And I'm sure that had to have been hard.
Oh, I had a pantry that was clean. I'll tell you that. It was empty. Because when you live alone, you probably don't eat at home a lot.
Yeah, well, and also like what I'm feeling is when we donate maybe books that we haven't finished reading that we always say we're going to read and we know we have no intention to really go back and finish, it is good to clear out the stuff.
Yes, I did that when we moved about 8 years ago. I would have told you that I don't have that many books. I donated 12 boxes.
Oh, wow.
Where my husband said, as he was carrying them out, he goes, "What's in these?" Because I was smart enough not to label them. But anyway, so I did that. I started when I had questions. The company was 4 years old when I was introduced. I was introduced that it was a network marketing, or no, an internet marketing company without a website. So another reason not to listen. And I said, well, that's okay. I don't have a computer. So,
Oh,
so I'm fine with that. I had a computer at work. I didn't, so I went into them and I said, I just started a business. It is not going to interfere with my dedication and my work here. But do you mind if I use my office computer like on my lunch hour or on my breaks or after work? I said, I don't really see me using it much for that because they don't have a website. But I said, if I need to, they just, sure, no problem. I mean, who does that? You say that.
yeah.
So the little bit I did, I used that computer. So it never seemed like a problem. I used it to order things, but that was about all you could do with the company. So 3 months later, I'm already making money with the company. I'm going to a happy hour to meet some people that I had become friends with who were part of my team. I found that out. And I did not know them well enough to know they're habitually late. And
Oh, no.
you know me, I'm habitually early.
Yes.
And so I'm sitting in this happy hour place by myself, and Bobby walks in 3 months
Oh.
later. And I know that I could feel God saying, that's him.
Was he on time?
Yes, he's habitually early too. And I looked and I know I smiled because God is saying, that's him.
Mm-hmm.
And he walked over and sat with me. And, I introduced myself, and it turns out we're meeting the same people. He goes, oh, they're always late. I said, oh, okay. Because he had started his business several months earlier. And I said, oh, okay. Well, we can just sit. I mean, I got a big table because they're going to meet with us. And we're just chit chatting. And I really liked him. I just felt this good energy. Turns out he played semi pro ball. And your picture just went away.
Oh, yeah, I'm here. I'm
Oh,
here.
okay.
I just
But it's
have...
it turns out he played semi pro ball, had never been married. Now I didn't find this out at happy hour, but part of the story, had never been married, had never been engaged, And I said to him, I said, you know, and we were in our 40s. That's unusual. And I said, and I did say, do you have any children? And he said, I just told you I've never been married. And I said, yes. And I asked you if you have any children. I said, because, you know, you don't know where somebody's coming from.
Yeah.
But it was the first time in my life that I had thought about going out with someone. That was on our first date that I was asking him that. But
Oh,
you know I'm supposed to find out these things because I'm that age where, yeah, you want to go out with nice people, but it could lead to something.
yeah.
And I said, how come you never got married? And he said, I was taught that you get married for life. And I took that
Oh.
seriously. And I'm like, oh. I mean, I was taught that as well. I just, my first time I got married, my husband wasn't taught that.
Yeah.
And, you know, and of course, when you're younger, sometimes you don't realize that's an important conversation. But so then it turns out he's Jewish. I'm like, that's Christmas. I mean, it's like all of these bizarre requests that I put out there
Yeah.
that any
Yeah, because if
girlfriend,
he's Jewish, he's not going to mind going to your families.
right? And then I'm like, huh, interesting. That I did not see coming. And he said, and I said that it was important to me. I said, it is important to me that you believe in Jesus. And well, he said, well, of course I do. Well, that's not,
Oh,
and of course I do for Jewish people typically. I'm not judging, but I'm just saying I know
yeah, yeah.
their faith. And then after we started dating, like the beginning of August, this was in July, beginning of August. And I mean, from the first date, we were together.
Oh,
And it was funny because I had said to him, I said, now I go to Cincinnati every Christmas. Oh, we don't need to go there when it's cold. I go, well, we go there. I said, I'm happy for you to go. And I'm happy if you don't want to go. That's okay. Now, the first Christmas he didn't go because we had only been, even though we were a couple, we were only together for 4 months.
yeah.
Big family. That's a lot to take. So he went the next summer. And my nephew, who's now 30, said to him, he was 3. He looked up at him and he
Oh.
goes, does he know Jesus is the reason for the season? And he didn't know. And I said, yes, he does. He goes, oh, okay. And went back to eating. I'll never forget. And so, I mean, that was always something fun that he even remembers as a 30-year-old that he said that.
Oh, that's awesome.
But it wasn't that I said you can't see your family. It was just that is a very special time to me, and it's a very special time with children, and a very special memory that I'm not willing to adjust.
Yeah.
And so it's worked perfectly. I mean, we just had our 27th anniversary.
Oh.
I just celebrated my 29th anniversary with the company.
Oh,
Thank
congratulations.
you. And so when people say, are you still doing that thing? I say, well,
That
yeah,
thing.
for the last 29 years, it's kind of like a career. But I am a master fitness practitioner. One of my pivots, Shannon, this year is I seldom said that. I don't know if you heard me say that very often, and we've known each other a while. Because I'm a certified personal trainer since the 80s. I do now say since the 1900s because that
One
sounds
of the
really,
kids, one
really,
of the kids at Plato did that. We heard them talking, and I'm like, I have to go home now.
yeah.
I was like, what do you mean 1900s?
You know, it sounds really long. And so I never said master fitness practitioner. It's just a lot more certifications over the years, but it sounded almost pretentious to me. And one of my friends who I've known 25 years, she goes, you need to say that
Yeah.
you went through that because you wanted to give the best you could give to people, to your clients. You didn't go through the trainings and the certifications to be called something. I understand that, but that sets you apart.
Yeah, absolutely. And I haven't heard you use that title.
I got so in March of 2024, this was a major pivot for me. Now, I've given you some major pivots along the way. And in March of 2024, I said, well, first, March of 2020, when the world went crazy, as I like to refer to it,
Yes.
I said, I walked downstairs because that's how I get to my office. And I said, God, this is really nice. You gave me a 2-week vacation. And, God does laugh at when we make our plans. and so I said, okay, I'm turning on Netflix. and, and I thought 2 weeks. And I called a few people to make plans for when the 2 weeks was up, and I got some weird responses. And then I said, okay, I think I need to have another talk. And I said, God, what do I do now? I'm used to meeting people. I'm used to going out and about. I talk to everybody. I smile. I'm having this mask. People look like they're afraid to talk to me. What do I do? And I was reminded that I work for myself and that I had just subscribed to Zoom and maybe I need to use that.
Oh, yeah.
And so I started using it and liking it. And of course, as soon as we were able to make our own decisions about how we work, which was about 6 weeks, I was back out doing things, but combining it. So I worked much more efficiently, as did most people. And people enjoyed being out, but they also enjoyed their time on Zoom.
Yeah.
So it was really a blessing for a lot of people. Then in March of 2024, I did say, okay, I need to be exposing myself to more networking and more people that I used to meet, a lot more crowds, and that's just not happening. And the platform Alignable, somebody had told me over and over, you need to revisit it. It's different
I
from
need to do that. I'm on there, but I have to get active in all the things.
I can show you, and I'm happy to do that. I teach
Oh,
people because I searched out for a lot of answers and a lot of people didn't know. They would just jump on and they meant well, but I was put in the right place to find the right answers and I can guide people and I'm happy to do that. So, but I did say, okay, I'm going to sign up as a free member because I don't take it lightly when I work for money. I know I'm supposed to respect it and I'm supposed to use it wisely. And
mhm.
so I just said, okay, I'm going to be free and I am going to reach certain benchmarks with my business. And I will know if it's something that is valuable for me and if I should become a paid member. I didn't even say what benchmark I needed to meet. I just felt like I was trusting that God would guide me and that I would know. So, exactly 2 months later, showing up to me meant I would book appointments for networking. I would be in uncomfortable networking situations, thrown into network speed dating, because that's what it felt like. And you would just talk to people. And then I said, well, then I've got to book one on ones after that. And that's where you really get to know people. You feel good referring them or putting them on your list as a possible person, not a possible person, but a person you could refer. So I did that. And then the beginning of May, 2 months later, I said, I need to be a paid member. And I've never looked back. And
Wow.
it went every single month. Now we're talking May, June, July, August, 4 months of meeting and greeting and setting one-on-one appointments. You know how busy I've been.
Yeah.
And they took them as serious appointments and I followed the guidelines I had set for myself. And so it was 4 months where I never questioned. It doesn't seem like anything's happened. I did not question. I just kept doing. And in August, I met this amazing person. I met her. She just, as soon as we talked, even 7 minutes, I need to work with you.
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa, I said, I feel the same. I said, we have a lot of good energy and there's a lot of commonality as far as our mission, how we talk to each other. She saw my cross, you know, she had a cross on. It was just, there was things that came up that don't always come up with strangers. So within about a month, we were partners. And then a couple months later, I met another person. Same thing.
Wow.
And each time, thank you, God. Thank you, God. And I
Oh,
met her. And then it gets to be, so I met some other people. I've exposed people to the products. You know, it's not them, it's who they know. They feel the same way. It's all going really well. And I'm showing up even on days when I don't want to show up.
yeah.
Like I said to you one day, and it was in April, I said to myself, oh, I can't do this. I can't be charming right now. Like I've said to my husband sometimes, I have been charming all day. I will not be mean, but probably not going to be charming right now.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's cool. Do your own thing. But so I just was reminded by God, you said you were going to show up. And I had committed to being there. So I showed up. And the very first person I got partnered with was a health professional. And I wanted to expand that division. And he looks big on screen, but I don't really know if he's, I mean, probably was a football player, but he leans in like this in his face and he goes, talk to me. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun. And I just said, okay, God. So we just start talking. And this was on a Monday. And he said, I need to work with you.
Wow.
I tried not to like, really? And he says, I need to work with you. I said, well, I would love that, but I would love that we both look at our calendars and schedule a one-on-one because this is 7 minutes.
Yeah.
And so he said, okay, great. But on Alignable, you don't have their contact information. You just know you met with them. So the second it was over, I clicked to connect with him. Now people have to go and accept, but I clicked to connect with him. I go, we have to meet. I have this time open tomorrow. Does it fit your schedule? Let me know. I'll set up a Zoom. He got back to me immediately. Yes.
Wow.
He's a health professional. Chances of that happening, you know, they're booked solid too. So we met the next day. He said again, okay, well, I need to get started. What do I need to do? I need to work with you. This is what I've been looking for the clinic. And I said, I really want to show you a little bit more information. Trust me, I would love to rush into exactly what you're talking about, but I think it's fair to you that you know everything about my health professional division. He says, okay, so what about tomorrow morning? So now we're at Wednesday. What about tomorrow morning? Yes, tomorrow morning's perfect. 15 minutes before the appointment, he says to me, he texts me, oh, my brother's going to be on. He's an MD and he owns the clinic where I'm the managing director. And he's also an emergency room doctor. So he's going to join us. I'm like,
wow.
So I'm like, okay. And the health professional that I was bringing on to do a pop on, just meaning maybe answer a couple questions, say, I have been working with this company. I know Paula very well, that type of thing. I text her just to prepare you. I just found this out. She goes, no problem. Her pop on was a 90-minute conversation.
Wow.
So she said, do you want me to go over the particulars? I said, I'm comfortable doing it or I'm comfortable turning it over to you. And she said, well, why don't you go ahead and pull up the PowerPoint and I'll talk them through it because health professional to health professional. I said, perfect. The first person's partnered with me on Wednesday. The other
Wow.
one was going to partner a half hour later, except that we were faster than the computer. So we had to wait until the computer updated and everything was right in the system. And just because he's a doctor in an emergency room situation, he was available the next day. So by Thursday, this had all fallen into place because I showed up.
Wow. That is amazing. So let me couple things that I'm getting from this is showing up even when you don't want to,
Yes.
because that's a sign of obedience. If we're asking God, I would like this, and then we're not going with excellence when the seed is still in the soil,
Mm-hmm.
how do we expect for the planting and the harvesting if we're not willing to whatever they tend to it when the seed is in there? So
Right.
that definitely, I love that. And so Ross and I met at our singles group. I had told God, I do not want to get remarried. I am good. Us four, no more. Me and the three kids, I was good. And, people just kept, God's telling me he's got a husband for you. And so one day in the singles group, I was like, okay, if you're going to bring a man, and I flapped that table and I said, you bring him in here. That way, if he's bad, they can let me know, other people, because I didn't trust myself. I missed all the red flags with my first marriage. And about 3 weeks later, Mr. Turner comes walking in, and the rest is history.
Yeah. And it's funny how that works out.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That sounds so wonderful. So, what would be your biggest advice on pivoting?
When something doesn't feel right, I had never asked with a man, oh, I want this, and this, because every girlfriend, when we would have fun conversations, oh, that's ridiculous, Paula. You're really limiting.
Oh, yeah.
And I was thinking, well, I didn't really ask their opinion. I was just having girlfriend talk. And it wasn't where protect me from something. I didn't know this person. I mean, the man. But I think it's always important to go inside, and that's how I refer to it when I'm praying. But go
Hmm.
inside, listen to messages you get from God.
Yeah.
And it came up quite clearly another time. People always say, "Oh, don't talk uh, religion, politics, or I forget what the other thing is, but they always say, but it's religion and politics." Well, my belief as a Christian is not religion, it's
Relationship.
right. And, but I went and, oh, don't put that on social media. You know how I start my day, a Bible
Yeah.
verse every day. So I said, I just, that hurt my heart because I thought for a second, this person is more successful than I, if you look at where they are, or how people might assess that. And I said, am I not supposed to do what has felt so right and so good to me and has opened doors for me? And I thought about it and I said, but he also tells me to be myself. Myself is a Bible verse to start my morning.
Yeah.
And so that day, I had already done the Bible verse. And I just said, God, I'm going to know the right thing. I'm going to know that this is from you. And I wasn't asking for a sign. I just said, I'm going to know, because I don't believe I test God. I believe I say, I'm going to know.
Yeah.
Well, that day, some stranger on Facebook messaged me and said, I want to thank you for that Bible verse. I look forward to it every morning to start my day.
Oh, I love that.
That was a pivot.
Oh, yes. You never know who is watching.
Right. And that and then on Alignable, here's another pivot. Alignable has 10 million people on it. Now, here's the importance of showing up. 10 million people. I was on with somebody, I don't know, a 7-minute meeting. And she goes, oh my gosh, I am so glad I got paired with you. I said, well, that's good to hear. I'd love to know why. She said, just yesterday, somebody was talking about you on Alignable, and they said, have you been introduced to Paula Hochman yet? And she said, other people were saying, well, you've got to meet her. And
Oh,
I said, well, that's interesting to know that people are having a conversation about me on Alignable. And I said, I feel pretty fortunate. But she didn't remember who it was.
and I second that people need to get to talk to you.
Well, thank
So
you,
let me
Shannon.
ask you, Paula, on that note, how can people reach out to you?
Well, and of course, my last name, it's right on the screen, but Hochman. My phone number is 727-492-0025. I'm very open about that. If you text me, which is what I suggest, let me know who you are.
And if you prank call her, we will find you and do it back.
Yes.
We
Yeah,
are like, we grew up in the 80s and stuff. We know this stuff.
we know how. And also it's just I would say my email, but emails get so cluttered. But just Paula Hochman on Facebook and on
Okay.
LinkedIn, everywhere. Instagram. I'm known as the Healthy Wealthy Coach on Instagram.
Wonderful. And who is your ideal client?
My ideal client is a health professional who either realizes to be successful they need to provide what their clients are or their patients are asking for, meaning their patients are saying more and more, I want to take responsibility as much as possible for my own health, and how do I do certain things. So guide them to me. I have a whole system for health professionals for 21 years, and it's working really well, and it's helping them grow their practice. A health professional like that, a health or an individual who says, wow, I'm just confused. More and more, I know I need to take responsibility. It seems like what I've done isn't working, but I'm also seeing a lot of confusing things online, and I don't know
Yes.
what to believe. And I
Yeah.
don't put other things down. I just explain what people are looking for. And I offer a lot of free information.
Yeah.
It's all about education.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And if you can recap one last time that one piece of advice for somebody in the pivot.
I think more than anything, realize that your inner voice, especially your gut, is telling you what's right. So listen to other people, but then sit quietly and listen to yourself, because I believe that's where God speaks to you.
Yes. All right. So thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Get ready. We've got other stories coming on how to help you pivot when that season comes and the doors start shutting and you're like, but wait a minute, God, what's happening? What's happening? You are like Ross and Chandler going pivot, trying to get the couch up the stairs. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you everyone for joining us.